Hi, everybody. This is Lee, and I'm at a website called Socialist Alternative. That's Shama Sawant's people. Anyway, they have great articles there, and I read through them to get that perspective on the election or the economic system here in the United States, and then also around the world. They comment on world systems as well. Between this and socialist workers and socialist world, I learn a lot. But anyway, I'm at Socialist Alternative, and they're commenting on the Jeremy Corbyn phenomenon in Great Britain. And there's an excellent write-up here. I highly recommend it. And so it's from July 6th. It's by Peter Tafe. And it's Britain's earthquake election, consolidating the Corbyn revolution. And so they say in the first paragraph that in April, Theresa May called a snap general election with the Tories, which are pretty much equivalent to our conservative right wing here in the United States. They were 20 points ahead in the polls, and they expected to win easily and to rout Labour, which is a more left-leaning party. And the article says that then Jeremy Corbyn defied Labour's right wing and launched a radical anti-austerity manifesto. And now, after this election has taken place, Theresa May hangs by a thread to power, and that she's presiding over a split party in a minority government, and that there's a feeling of mounting anger against the savage cutbacks in government, and that's been epitomized by the Grenfell Tower fire. And so people have seen an example of what austerity cuts do, and that's kill people. And so there's a backlash against Theresa May for very good reason. And so she's considered a failure as a prime minister, and that her gamble to call a general election, which was in order to have a showpiece crushing of Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party, actually failed and created a backlash against her, and that Jeremy Corbyn, while he did not win the seat itself of prime minister, that his party actually gained a huge margin in the parliament. And so the people voiced their disapproval of the austerity. And so, again, this is an excellent write-up. Of course, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But I highly recommend that you stop by here if you have time, and I'll post a link in the description. I can say that Jeremy Corbyn is almost bittersweet to progressives here in the United States, because he represents what we might have had if Bernie Sanders had won not only the Democratic primary against neoliberal cheater Hillary Clinton, that what they achieved in Great Britain is what we might have been able to if things had gone a different way, and that perhaps Jeremy Corbyn zigged where Bernie Sanders zagged, and therefore he was able to achieve his goals, and most of that of the people that he represented, the people of Great Britain, and that they learned from us of what not to do in terms of collaborating with the neoliberal party, and that maybe we can learn from them, not only in 2018 of what not to do in terms of sabotaging one's own revolution, but maintaining adherence towards progressive goals and not wavering from what the people want. And that maybe we can learn again from them in 2018, and then also in 2020, that we'll be able to learn from Great Britain after they learn from us, and we learn from them and they learn from us. And so anyway, that's Socialist Alternative. There's also another article here talking about the Democratic Socialist of America, and that Bernie Sanders considers himself a Democratic Socialist, and that he has inspired like-minded people. He's energized like-minded people to join that group. And that the Democratic Socialist Alternative Party has itself expanded. That whereas prior to Bernie Sanders' entry into the race, prior to the 2016 election, they were about 8,500 strong, and that now in early May, or as of early May, that they've grown to about 21,000. And so that they've more than doubled in size. And that was Bernie Sanders' influence on the electorate. And so all was not lost. There's still time. And there's still ways and means to achieve what needs to be achieved. And that not only has this been noticed on the left, this growth of energy in terms of progressive politics and democratic socialism, that even the National Review, which I have used from time to time as a source on my channel, that the National Review has actually noted this. It's a leading right-wing journal, and they published a warning in March titled "Socialism's Rising Popularity Threatens America's Future." And so it's getting noticed that people are seeing that rising support for kind of a community-minded focus of a rising tide that lifts all boats instead of there can only be one mentality. That there's growing energy on that side of the political dial. And I'll leave a link to this article as well. And so now I'm going to go to another article at Socialist Alternative. This is talking about what would quality universal healthcare look like, a socialist approach to healthcare. And so they, in general, support opposition to Trumpcare, but they also want to throw full support to Medicare for all. Trumpcare is not defensible at all. Obamacare is even less defensible, or slightly, whatever. Trumpcare is not defensible. Obamacare is not as defensible either. Medicare for all, they say, is a type of healthcare that is defensible, single-payer healthcare. There's a discussion of what that is. They also discuss the national health system in Great Britain, and how that is something that people are willing to fight for, and that when Theresa May attacked the national health system, that is how she damaged herself. That was the mistake that she made. And so that's how important people view healthcare. And so there's a great discussion here about single payer possibly moving to the states. Some states have tried it. Vermont has tried it. California has tried it. Nevada's tried a type of single payer, more like a public option, using Medicaid as a buy-in solution. And that Hawaii is still working on its own single payer legislation, and so is New York, and so is Washington State. And I think we're gonna see that at least one state manage to get it through, not only their ballot referendum where the voters support it, or the state legislature will pass it, and then hopefully the governor will listen to the voice of the people. And if the state legislature has to override the governor's veto, and hopefully that'll be done as well. And so maybe, we've seen defeats on the state level, but it's not over. Again, Hawaii, Washington State, and New York are contemplating the possibility of a type of universal healthcare system. And that it might be one state that leads the charge. And people are saying that, well, it can't be done at state level because there's not sufficient tax base. And I'm anticipating that if one state passes it, hopefully there'll be a rush of new tax money into that state by people who relocate and join that state and start generating that tax base. I'm hoping that's what happens. We don't know. We haven't seen it in action yet. There are many predictions of what legalizing medical marijuana would have disasters and things like this. One state did it, and then 29 states followed, and so it looks like that's going to be the trend. So anyway, that's the socialist alternative take on Medicare for all. They actually want to even go several steps further, fighting for single payer, but also even going further than that, nationalizing some systems within the medical healthcare industry. I'll post a link to that in the description. And then now I'm going to turn back to Bernie Sanders. Since I started talking about him, I'm going to end with him. This is an article at Common Dreams. This is by Jake Johnson. As Republicans hide from voters, Sanders rallies Trumpcare resistance. And so Bernie Sanders spoke in 2 deeply red states, and that he's gone to these red states before. They know him down there. That's his people. They like him, and they want to hear what he says. This is Kentucky and West Virginia. He slightly lost Kentucky in the Democratic primary against Hillary Clinton by just by a few points, and it was kind of some things that people said went on there. But anyway, Kentucky was very close for him. It was a virtual tie. And then he actually won West Virginia. And so, of course, it's no problem for him to go and talk to his people. And so he spoke down there on the effort to emphasize the dangers posed by the GOP healthcare plan. It was an educational effort by Bernie Sanders to get on the ground and talk to people face to face. And so Bernie Sanders may have provided the blueprint for Jeremy Corbyn to achieve what he achieved in Great Britain, and that it's possibly that Jeremy Corbyn's success in moving people into the lawmaking body to work against austerity, that it's possibly that Jeremy Corbyn might inspire provide inspiration to Bernie Sanders and that other politicians up and coming in the United States. But anyway, Bernie Sanders is talking to people over the congressional recess about defending Obamacare and then providing education on the dangers of Trumpcare. Personally, I like to see more emphasis on Medicare for all. He's still talking about the Senate bill. I've grown impatient. I'm like, okay, let's see it, because we've been yakking about Trumpcare versus Obamacare, and it's a false fight that both of them protect the health insurance industry, that they both channel money into these HMOs away from the people into the HMOs, and that Medicare for all is the solution to both Obamacare and Trumpcare. That Medicare for all is the way. But Bernie Sanders is providing education, that he's providing a counter narrative against Trumpcare, providing information to voters on care and not cuts. So it's slowly changing the narrative to provide a united voice in favor of Medicare for all. So he's on the ground, he's educating, coming about it this way, that maybe that he can ride that wave of a type of community mindedness towards healthcare, getting people to actually see that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's the case on healthcare. So that's how I view that. I'm going to post these links in the description, and you can read more and see what Bernie Sanders is doing, what Jeremy Corbyn is doing, and that what we can all do to assist them as they assist us in terms of healthcare, providing more focus on healthcare for all rather than military weapons for all. You can't eat a nuclear missile, I don't think. it's not going to solve your problems. It's actually going to create more. And so I like what is happening. That there's voter education, citizen education on the needs of what we can do in terms of changing the narrative away from an Ayn Rand, Paul Ryan, Rand Paul type of a focus on self um, and to others as well. And so I say good luck.